Jay Gabler, Duluth News Tribune arts and entertainment reporter, back with another special episode of the Duluth News Tribune Minute, dedicated to my column, Front Row Seat. This week I wrote about climate change. You might have heard, if you're living in Duluth, you are living in a supposedly climate-proof city. I gave some thought to that brand that people are imposing on Duluth. Last year, when I told people I was moving to Duluth, I was not prepared for how many of them had an immediate response along the lines of, "Oh, you're becoming a climate refugee." Those comments seemed odd, given that I was only moving from Minneapolis. Do people think there's some sort of magic climate shield you pass through after grabbing your rolls at Toby's? Even in the Twin Cities, it seems, awareness of Duluth's climate-proof reputation is becoming pervasive. Outside of Minnesota, it must be even more top of mind when anyone thinks of our city. In recent years, as the effects of climate change have become increasingly calamitous, national media have become fascinated with the idea that residents of sunny and fire-prone California or tropical and flood-prone Florida would pick up and move to our frigid but scenic city in the middle of the continent. Climate-proof Duluth is a term coined by infrastructure scholar Jesse Keenan, whose research has been the basis for much of the city's climate buzz since 2019, when he was invited to deliver a lecture at UMD. The notion of Duluth as a climate refuge has since figured in stories on national platforms including CNN, ABC News, Marketplace, Reuters, Foreign Policy, Bloomberg, CNBC, The Independent, and the Christian Science Monitor, among others. The New York Times, though, takes the prize for being most assiduous of all in covering Duluth's climate migrants. Having previously explored the topic in 2019 and 2020, the Times recently ran a feature headlined, "Out-of-Towners Head to Climate-Proof Duluth." Reporter Deborah Kamen talked with transplants including New London Cafe owner John Jenkins and interviewed Mayor Emily Larson at City Hall. Larson told the Times, "The idea that we are so ignoring the needs of our planet that people have to move is terrifying. It's dystopian." Those comments seem consistent with Duluthians' seeming hesitance to embrace the climate-proof brand. Being a refuge of last resort for people whose homes are aflame and whose rivers are drying up isn't exactly something we want to brag on. If many Duluthians react to every new climate refuge story with an eye roll, in part that's because the whole angle can feel like a backhand compliment. The news magazine Time, for example, cites Duluth in a story headlined, "Where we'll end up living as the planet burns." That's kind of like your crush saying they'll marry you if you're the last person on Earth. On top of that, Duluth is far from immune to the effects of climate change. In fact, climate change has become a literally pressing matter this winter. Our warming planet is creating more evaporation, and that atmospheric moisture is falling on the Northland in record amounts of wet, sticky snow. That's putting pressure on local forests, Duluth's city budget, and even our shopping mall. As freeze-thaw cycles multiply during our less consistently cold winters, potholes gape and lake ice becomes less likely. That's good news for the shipping industry, but not for the planet. I could go on about emerald ash borers and other fun topics, but you get the point. No place on Earth is truly climate-proof. Even a hillside can flood, and proximity to a Great Lake can't stop a forest from burning. That said, Duluth certainly might look appealing to someone from a place where climate change is creating more immediately existential threats. Migration to Duluth due to climate concerns is certainly happening, though it's hard to quantify the extent to which climate-inspired migration is contributing to the city's tight housing market. There's a housing crisis just about everywhere right now, and Duluth faces some particular challenges in adding units. The mayor's office has estimated the city's infrastructure could theoretically support 130,000 residents, but people lived a little more cheek to jowl back when the city's population last hit six figures. Returning to that kind of density would require extensive urban development, including, as Keenan hints, the restoration of Duluth's lost mass transit infrastructure. It's understandable, then, that Duluthians would have mixed feelings about being advertised as a climate refuge. A larger labor force with a wider range of skills would help our industries grow and could import wealth from elsewhere in the country, but new arrivals need places to live, and if we can't add housing quickly enough, existing locals could get priced out. Keenan refers to this process as climate gentrification. At the same time, there's a tension between making Duluth a great place to live and making it a great place to visit. While the two goals often coincide, amenities like the Lake Walk benefit locals as well as tourists, they sometimes clash. Owner's recent decision to convert a floor of Lincoln Park Flats from residential use to a boutique hotel demonstrates how, despite rising rents, it can be more profitable to rent living spaces in the short term. This all creates the potential of a seismic conflict over the city's limited resources, as Larson told the Times. Seismic is a strong word, but it's probably wise not to underestimate the disruptive potential of future resource conflicts. As the Anthropocene advances, desperation may spread, and we do happen to have this giant lake conveniently full of fresh, cool water. The world is interconnected. Resources can and will flow, as will people. That makes it all the more important for today's Duluthians to avoid dismissing the climate refuge narrative as mere hype, while also avoiding the temptation to dig in for an us versus them battle. I'm a newcomer to Duluth in a sense, but I'm not entirely a carpetbagger. I lived here as a child in the 1980s, at which point the city had seen decades of population decline. At that point, the city's frankly defensive slogan was, "We're Duluth, and proud of it." What exactly were we so proud of? The last 40 years have seen an expansive series of answers to that question, and the city's much more welcoming new slogan invites newcomers to love it like we do. Whether quickly or slowly, climigrants, Keenan pronounces the word with emphasis on the first syllable, will continue arriving in Duluth. They might love it like we do, or they might love it in their own way. Who knows, they might kind of hate it. As today's Duluthians consider what to make of any potential newcomers, some historical perspective is in order. European colonizers once arrived in search of natural resources and then forcibly relocated indigenous communities, so any descendants of those coloners who are inclined to get huffy about disruptive new arrivals might want to check their privilege. That will become particularly true with respect to people who are actually displaced by catastrophic losses. They might arrive in Duluth grieving, traumatized, and in need of immediate material support. In that sense, Duluth's climate refugees may come more closely to resemble refugees from war or political persecution. In Keenan's 2019 presentation at UMD, one of the most bracing slides considered an opposing view. Why might climate migrants not want to choose Duluth, given other potential destinations? Keenan drew a knowing laugh from the audience when he pointed out that Duluth has, quote, some significant deferred maintenance challenges. The surprised scholar said, I didn't even know that was funny. Other items listed on the slide included legacy pollution, suburban mall culture, structural poverty, and nativism. The more sustainable and inclusive we can make our community here and now, the better positioned we'll be in future years to welcome people who come our way, whether they're seeking climate refuge or just looking for a breath of fresh air. That's this week's column. Next week, on a completely different subject, I'll be talking about the end of Phantom of the Opera on Broadway. It is closing after 35 years on the Great White Way, and the Lyric Opera of the North is planning a special local celebration to mark the end of an era in American musical theater. Well, global musical theater, Andrew Lloyd Webber being from across the pond. Until then, I'm Jay Gabler.